Welcome to the Bills Show. Oh, no, wait, this is not about the Buffalo Bills. This is about MJSA Expo Online. But before we get started, I need to do a quick tech check. If you can look in the chat box, it's either on the right side of your screen or just below it, depending on what type of device you're using. Can you just send me a chat and let me know if you can see and hear me okay? And Dave, say hi. Let's make sure they can hear you too.
Can everyone hear me?
Send us a note. We'll get started once we're sure this is working. If you're not having great transmission, you might want to log out and switch to a Chrome browser. This system works terribly with Internet Explorer, and it doesn't like Safari much either. But a Chrome browser is a great way to access the system. All right, it looks like they can see and hear us, and it is the top of the hour, so let's get started. Welcome to MJSA Expo Online. We want you to block your calendars on Wednesday afternoons at this time for the foreseeable future, because MJSA members are going to be bringing you a lot of incredible and fun and interesting technical information about how to make jewelry. So we're starting today with Dave Siminsky from United Precious Metal Refining. And say hi again, Dave.
Hi, everybody.
And we're going to be talking about refining. Go figure. So let's just start right in with Dave. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. But before I do that, because I also wanted to understand who was interviewing me, okay, and really to get the dirt on you first, so we can have a bond during this. And one of the things, so I reached out to colleagues, former employers, former colleagues, friends, family, and stuff like that, and they said, if you're going to spend time with Andrea, either you're reaching for these bottles or you're reaching for these bottles.
Oh, those are the ones. Yeah.
So these are the same bottles if everyone, and basically everyone understands when it comes to refining, for both the refiners and the customer sending refining, that they need either these or these to really understand everything. So I figured I'd go out, get the props needed, because this is really the feedback I got from your friends, family, colleagues, employers of what's best to deal with this type of situation. All right. So that being said, I guess what happens, I'll start by, like you said, introducing myself. My name is Dave Siminski. I'm the Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Technical at United Precious Metals. I've been with the company 26 years. From United's perspective, I think it's the best company to work for in the industry by far. That's my own shameless plug. Now, MJSA didn't want really this to become an infomercial about United or anything, about talk more about the industry. I don't really understand what they're talking about when it comes to certain things. And, you know, I did take a class on subliminal advertising, and I'm not sure what they mean, but I'm going to go with it. Okay, so my biggest thing is on United's perspective. My biggest thing on United's perspective is we do three facets of the jewelry industry. I've been with them for 26 years. Literally, I really think it's really one of the best companies to work for. There's something about not putting your resume together and going on LinkedIn and sending it out that really excites me, and I like the stability of this company. But we do three facets here. Oh, before I get started, so I get that shameless plug, is I've been here 26 years. This is my family, okay? My son, Tyler, my wife, Susan, my daughter, Lauren. Tyler, today is the last day he's taking the bar exam. He's been taking it virtually since Monday. Nice. So us in the family, for all you people out there, you understand about tuition, college, paying it. I'm in the home stretch. I'm just about there. It's almost going to be like a raise. I didn't say I'm going to get the money. Somebody in this house will get that extra money that tuition's I'm going to, but I'm not getting it. So I have a picture on my credentials of my family, and I also have a picture of Paris Hilton, which maybe later in the presentation I will talk about that also.
I hope we have time for that story, because that's a funny one.
Okay, so what happens is I've worked at United 26 years. Okay, United Precious Metals, based in Buffalo, New York. That's the Buffalo Bills. For all you Providence, Attleboro people, okay, with your New England Patriots for the past 20 years and all the Super Bowls, it's over. It's over. Your time is over. Right here, okay? Right here. This says it all. We got the Bills. We're all ready to go. Fantasy football, if you didn't take Josh Allen, that's all on you. Okay, being from Buffalo, New York, go Packers. What is that? Well, we'll talk about that later too. All right, Buffalo, New York. So what happens is United Precious Metals. We're about the size of a small Home Depot. That's our square footage. We're in Alden, which is 20 minutes from Buffalo. Everything in Buffalo is 20 minutes. You got to go to Niagara Falls, it's 20 minutes. You got to go to the Bills Stadium in Orchard Park, it's 20 minutes. You got to go home, you got to ride home, it's 20 minutes. Everything in Buffalo is 20 minutes. So we were established in 1988. We do, like I said, 3 facets of the jewelry business. We do product business here, we do analytical, and we do refining. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot when it comes to how the products actually tie into the analytical, which actually tie into the refining, and how they all work in conjunction in the entire industry. I know on this chat we have jewelry manufacturers, we have industry people, we have competitors in the industry, hopefully that are listening and all that stuff. Just for a side note to all the competitors that jumped on, I am not here to kill you. I am here for us, for the industry, so we all benefit from the conversation. Because the same issues that you have with your customers and the customers have with you, we have with each other. So we're all in this boat together. So go ahead.
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around what refining is all about too. So I think that point is well taken. Sorry, you were about to.
No, it's all good. So we have 85 associates. I think right now we're up to 90. We are a primary refinery. What basically means as being a primary refinery is we are one of the end guys on the food chain, which means we have the ability to take that caratage metal and turn it back to bullion, back to 4/9 gold, back to 4/9 silver. That's what a primary does. There are different steps on the food chain when it comes to refiners, smelters, cash guys, and all that stuff. And like I tell people all the time, Andrea, there's room for everyone on the food chain. There is room for everyone. It doesn't have to mean that you have to be a certain size to deal with the top guys. It doesn't mean, and I mean the top guys, the finishers, versus there's places for everyone on that chain. And what happens is no company or no 2 companies can handle all the business anyways. So it's good to spread it out and all that stuff. And it also is good it takes away the risk for the industry too. Just like multiple banking, when there's multiple banks that are involved, it mitigates the risk. So that's really about you. That's really about United. Like I said, size of a small Home Depot. Everything is done here in Buffalo, New York. We have no substations and all that stuff. You know, we're not satellite offices. Now we are a global company. So, and what I mean by a global company is what happens is we manufacture, refine globally. So we just don't deal with the United States. We have a big footprint in Mexico. We have a big one, obviously, in India. We have a big one in Thailand and also Hong Kong. So that's more product driven than refining driven, but it all, what I call it, is the circle of life. The products analytical and refining is all in the circle. And then you being a CEO of once Rio Grande, you probably understand that really well of how it all works together.
Absolutely. One of the things that I know is understood a lot about refining is the trust factor and all the different ways you get to the trust factor with a refiner. Could you talk about your analytics first? Because I don't think people realize what an important role that plays in a trustworthy, accurate, efficient refining process.
Yeah. So the analytics is really what happens is there are different testing methods out there. We'll go through it on as we talk about the from a manufacturing standpoint, but I'm going to talk about the analytics now from the refining standpoint. What happens is, being a primary refinery, we settle lots and do lots on fire assay. Fire assay is the legal standard. Okay, that's how lots are settled, which means the gold and the silver is settled by fire assay. The platinum and palladium is usually settled by a combination of an X-ray unit and an ICP unit. Fire assay, because I'll skip a little bit. Really, the fire assay is really the point of what happens is you're taking a hard pin sample, a melt. You're basically melting in a crucible. You're taking a glass rod. You're putting it into the molten metal, and you're pulling out a sample. You're going to cut that sample, and you're going to cut a little piece of it. You're going to take it to your analytical lab, and really what you do is you're going to cut a little piece of that pin, and you're going to put it in a little what it calls a lead apron. Call it a lead apron. And then what happens is then you're going to put that in what's called a ceramic coupelle, which is porous. The fire assay process is really then what you're going to do is you're going to heat it, and that lead apron is going to actually absorb the base metals into the coupelle. And then what you're going to be left with is the gold, silver, and any precious metals. You're going to be left with precious metals. So it's strictly a gold and silver lot. What happens is you're going to be left with the gold and the silver. You're going to know what the gold is, and really a lot of times you're going to get rid of the silver, and you're going to do the silver by difference, by mathematical difference. But that's really, and that's been around since the Egyptians. That is literally how to do a legal asset. Now there's plenty of people out there and plenty of smaller type guys, so they'll use an X-ray gun and all that type of stuff, which has a tolerance of error and all that stuff. And it's really not you can't really do it when you're dealing as a primary refinery. Some of the smaller guys and all that stuff, they'll use X-ray type of technology and all that because they won't have a lab, or they'll send their samples out to a lab, which works just as fine also. Listen, guys, one first tip of the trades, like, no, the refiners are not going to overpay. They're going to do their best to not overpay the situation. So they want to get it right, not just for yourself, but they want to get it right for themselves too. They don't want to, as a true partnership, like we were talking about earlier, you don't want to underpay a situation. You don't want to overpay a situation. You want to give people exactly what's in there. And that's really how it works. The platinum and the palladium, like we have 3 X-ray units here. You know, people will think X-ray, they'll think of a gun, or they'll think of some of the smaller distributor supply houses sell like a little tabletop unit, you know, $13,000, $14,000, $15,000. Our X-ray units are Fisher X-ray units. We have like 4 of them here. And really what happens is they're $100,000 to $150,000 machines. And the thing about the more expensive X-ray units is you can actually load more standards in it than a standard alloy. So you can build up your library. So when you pull a pin, so what happens is people ask, well, why do you have X-ray units here? Well, we have X-ray units, 1, for quality control of metals. And 2 is, in today's day and age of rush, many refiners like ourselves, the package will come in and the customer wants their money today. They want their money today. Now, it might have sat in a drum forever. It might have sat in their vault for like 4 months. But as soon as it's in your possession, they want it today. So them wanting it today, what happens is we're melting that pin, and a lot of times we'll X-ray it. And just so people understand the X-ray process, what an X-ray actually does from a technical standpoint is what it does is it scans the surface and excites the atoms that give off the energy. Okay, I didn't know this today. My own analytical lab told me it today. So I actually learned something here on this PowerPoint too. Which in turn, what happens, the readings are compared to the standards in the machine. And they can narrow it down. So really what it is that X-ray unit basically hits it, and it really excites the atom and the energy. And then what happens, the energy, what happens is then they'll compare that analysis of the energy breakdown to what's in that machine. The Fisher units that are expensive have the ability, so we can have multiple 10 karat and 14 karat standards all the way through. So you can really zero in on that and stuff like that. Now the ICP machine that we have is basically it's inductive coupled plasma unit. Really what it does, it's a destructive analysis that measures the elements in parts per million. So from that side, basically what it does, it dissolves the sample in solution through plasma, then shoots its wavelengths of light through the standards, and then it compares against the standards in the ICP. So a combination of any one of your refining partners, one of the things that's the best to ask them is, how are you doing our analytics? So is it X-ray? Is it what type of X-ray? Is it ICP? Is it fire assay? You know, how are you doing? Are you doing multiple assays?
So are you saying at UPM everything goes through fire assay and 1 or 2 forms of laser?
They will, if the laser will come through, or the ICP or the X-ray will come through if what happens is, if it has PGMs, platinum or palladium. So that's really the key. If it's strictly gold and silver, and that's why every pin sample, and most partners, most refineries, and they'll check the pin sample because with an X-ray unit, because then they'll tell it from the lab standpoint where it's got to go. So it's really that first analysis is usually an X-ray,
right? Okay,
where it needs to go. And if it's just gold and silver, you know, from our standpoint, we're doing everything in triplicate. So we have 3 different assayers that assay every lot with the same pin, and then what happens is you're comparing those results. Any highs or lows or big variances, you're throwing it out because you didn't get a good pin. If it's all tight, then you do what's called an average. And that's go ahead.
Well, no, I didn't want to interrupt you.
So no, then what happens? You have the 3 samples. You have the three fire assay analysis. You're doing an average, and then you also have the pin sample that you originally did the X-ray on. So a lot of times you have like 4 analyticals that are basing on one thing. Like I said, once again, refiners, United, all the guys, nobody wants to pay too much, nobody wants to pay too little. They want to get what they're supposed to give to the customer.
And get it right. So what you're saying, I think we all understand we're supposed to segregate our materials, but I don't think everybody understands why. And you talking about that first pass of analysis and then breaking it into, the proper path for making sure you get to the right refining and measurement method. That takes us to material segregation. So can you talk about that for a few minutes?
Well, if you do me a favor, if you could bring up the slide, the expectation slide to show everyone, because this pretty much sums it up.
Can you see that?
I can see it fine.
Oh, look, I've got something on that screen that needs to go away. There we go.
Okay, so for everyone, this is what I call, and I've done plenty of these conversations. I've done them for the NPA, for the pawnbrokers groups. I've done them for a lot of the shows where you're doing the seminars. And I always put refining results just like this. The advertisement is exactly what the burger looks like. You see it on the commercial. So what happens a lot of times, you box up your refining in a drum and all that stuff, and that's what you send off, and you're just like, this is what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to get. And truthfully, the customer a lot of times gets back the actual burger. And then what happens is that starts the conversation. So what happens is, what happens, the analyticals, the segregation, why is it like this? Why is it costing me so much? So I always tell people about expectations. So going even back to partnership, if you have a good partner, the best thing to do is actually discuss. Here's my barrel. This is my sweeps. What can I put in, and have those expectations of really what's going to be there and what you feel you have in there. Because most people actually get the actual burger. I'm going to tell you something. I'll give you a secret. I'm good with that slide.
You're done with that?
So I'm gonna give you a secret. So in 26 years of doing this, and I've probably, in United, the 26 years, we've probably done close to 500,000 refining lots in the 26 years I've been here. Very rarely has someone ever said to me, you paid me too much. You gave me too much. No, that can't be right. You gave too much. Okay? It's happened, but what happens, it very rarely does, because about the expectations. And sometimes with the reputations of refining and refiners, what has happened through history, what's happened recently. All that stuff questions this end of the business. I remember when I first started for United, it was like you'd go into a place, in the first 15 minutes of the conversation, if I was soliciting your business, was 15 minutes how the last horror story of the last guy you used or the last problem. So then you sit there and you're like, yeah, I understand. And the problem with the refining industry, from my standpoint, is it has a tendency to sell on the negative. It doesn't have a tendency to sell on the educational value. It has a tendency to sell on the negative. Well, basically, it's always like, we're going to give you more. Well, the implications of we're going to give you more means the other guy's giving you less. Like there's a lie and the guy you're using is not any good. That's not really fair, because to sell on that, I mean, you're really selling on the negative. I'm like, no, really what happens is people in our end of the business, to understand the full refining business, should be asking the right questions, building that relationship and that partnership. But for these guys, and I see it at the trade show booths all the time, and some of these guys are my friends, I'm like, stop it. Just stop it. Don't sell on a negative that I'm better than this guy and better than this guy. We're all using processes that have been around forever.
And they're accurate. They're accurate. Right.
Right. The customer, there's some things the customers can do that we'll touch on to help protect themselves and give themselves that sense of insurance and all that type of stuff, as we go into material segregation. But that's the big thing to me, is what happens is, from our industry, my own little soapbox for all you guys, stop selling on the negative. And I understand we've had big missteps in the industry. We had a big misstep with NTR/Elemental, okay? We had a big misstep there. We had a big misstep with Republic Metals. You have two major refineries, LBMA refineries in the United States, that were two of the biggest that are out of business. That created massive holes in the business, in the supply chain, everything that goes with it. Tarnishes the whole industry, hurts the whole industry. People will say like that. When those things happen to us, they're like, oh my God, that's great news for you. I'm like, it's not. It's not good news at all. When a competitor goes down, for the people that sit there and sell and go, oh, we're going to pick up all this business. No, it's not good at all. A, most of the time you can't handle it all when it comes in the door. B is what happens is it tarnishes, because now it's going to put, I tell people we have so many scopes on us, stethoscopes, microscopes. All we have is scopes, spotlights. All it did is magnify, the industry and the issues it has. So when you have major refineries that go out of business here domestically, it hurts everything. And it hurt everything. And now what happens? Everyone's scattering around. And the problem with the term refinery or refining, people use it all the time. People use refinery as I'm a refinery.
Right. I threw it in a casting machine and remelted it and I refined it.
Right. I'm a refinery. A refinery, just so everyone understands, a primary refinery is basically someone who has the ability to take that material back to bullion. So if you don't see gold on the open market, you want to see Johnson Massey / Assay, there's gold on the market. Metal, there's gold on the market. United Precious Metals, there's fine gold on the market. Okay, those are fine gold. They actually make fine gold. There's bullion. So what happens is that dictates that. So when you lost Elementals gold / Ohio Precious Metals gold, and you lost Republic's gold in that chain, now what happens is in the industry there's a big starving for fine gold because you don't have that feedstock coming in. Because that stuff's not coming in the way it used to come in, and also too is, even when gold shot up to $2,000 now, it's not, everyone thought like in 2009, 10, $2,000, 1950, whatever, the refineries were raking in, making money, expanding, advertising, doing shows and all that stuff. 10 years later, the market shoots up again, no volume. It's there, but not the volume it was. So then people got their theories, right? Oh, either all the gold was already melted and all that type of stuff, or people didn't need the money. You have all the stimulus out there and all that stuff. But what it means is, from our standpoint, we deal with the manufacturers. This is what MJSA is about, manufacturing, the manufacturing group. We deal with the manufacturers. The manufacturers need fine gold, fine silver, platinum, and palladium to make metals, to make the fab metals and the casting grains, to produce it for the jewelry manufacturers so then they can make their products. That's the whole chain. And when you lost a lot of that feed, that it's really definitely stressed the system, especially during COVID. It's just been a disaster because it's just not there, and you don't have other suppliers. So that makes it different. But to go into the point of the industry news, how it's affected is just like I was saying about the feedstock. So when you have all these, we have massive, I call them very large jewelry manufacturers in this country. Good companies, rock solid companies, put out great products. Manufacturer here. Got some satellite offices maybe in the Caribbean and Mexico, but a bulk of their manufacturing is done here. And what happens is when you don't have that stock and that gold and silver, it really stresses the system. And then what happens is the banking industry got nervous because the banking industry, the risk, they're on for the risk. And I tell people all the time, it's like, when you look at anyone who sells metals, and I'm sure you had this when you were at Rio, it's like you're selling basically a commodity. Your margins are this thin, this thin. And then what happens is, so it's pretty much and like, I don't have a ton of labor into this. I've got labor, and it's just like, what happens is in our industry, and I'm sure you saw it at Rio, Stellar goes through it, Stern goes through it, Morvillo. These are world-class metal suppliers, Hoover and Strong, all these guys. And what happens is people out there, they want us to not only be a product supplier, but they want us to be in a refinery. But truth be told, they want us to be a bank.
Yeah.
And the problem is we're not making banking fees. So you want to buy grain and buy sizing stock and buy all this stuff, and you want to seriously, and then people will flip where you want to raise your price of something by $1 or something like that, like you took away their firstborn. I'm like, there's no money in it anymore. I tell people all the time, there's no money in metals. The money's in shipping and insurance.
That's fair enough. So I want to peel it back, though, and I want to go back to material segregation, because I think that's really helpful for our audience to think about why and how to segregate the materials and how that gets them. It doesn't get them more. It gets everything through the process faster and more effective.
Okay, and that's a great point. So really the biggest thing on material segregation is what I call it is high grade versus low grade. High grade is basically the way it is. It's metal. Okay, so it's basically hard metal. Metal in turnings form, scrap, casting trees. That's the metal portion of it. So high grade, pretty easy. High grade gold. Gold refining is the easiest to do high grade. Silver refining is easy. So platinum, palladium, a bit of a challenge, but it's hard metal. That's the high grade portion of it. So my biggest thing I talk material segregation when it comes to the high grade, from the bench jeweler to the major manufacturer, do the best you can to keep the PGMs away from the gold and silver. Do the best you can. And the problem is it's hard because their manufacturing streams all go through one place or they're all doing stuff like that. But like I tell people is when you get your PGMs into your high grade and your low grade, it makes the refining so much more expensive. And the worst part about it, like, and people will flip. They'll be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're charging this much. And from our standpoint, we actually, it's easier for us to do a strict gold lot than it is a 4 melt lot where you've got platinum, palladium. And people are like, well, the percentage, I'm like, the percentages are eaten. So it's like, it's not like we make more money on those percentages. We much rather do straight gold all day or straight silver. Or if the PGMs are separate and they don't have any gold and silver contained. So I would say on the segregation standpoint, the biggest thing is if you can keep those PGMs away from the gold and silver. We know sometimes you can't. We know there'd be a small bench jeweler or whatever, but anything you can do on your testing methods, it's huge.
But even at the small bench jeweler level, where we've seen shops that have done a good job of saying, look, your scraps, PGMs go here, you know, your high grades go here, and most of them aren't dealing with the more low grade metals, but they segregate them from the beginning so they don't have to separate it all out later. And that's a really good process innovation. Okay, so you need 2 little buckets instead of 1. For most people, they're pretty small buckets, but it does make the process faster for you, doesn't it? It
does. And what it is people sometimes don't segregate it because they feel it's an extra lot charge. It's extra analysis. Well, instead of 1 lot, you got 2 or 3. A lot of times you're better paying 3 lot charges than you are having it all as 1.
Yep.
And what happens, you're right. Then you can get your gold out. You can get your, you can get your gold in quick. You can get your silver out quicker. But when it's a mishmash bar, that has a lot of value, it takes time. It just takes time. And here's what happens when it's taking time. People are watching the market. So a lot of people are watching the market, and they're like, and then what happens? You'll be like, well, gold was $1,900 and it just fell $50. And you know what? You did that on purpose. No, we didn't do that on purpose. That's when it came through the system, and that's how it takes long to get through the system and do the proper analytical. Because if we don't take our time and do that correctly, then we'll have a different argument. So I'm like, anytime you can do the segregation and stuff like that, that's fine. I just want to stop for a little commercial break. So everyone sees that. A little commercial break here. Okay.
I didn't know I was supposed my Packers jersey today, Dave. I would have been more prepared.
I'm just saying. All right, so that commercial break is over with. Okay, so that's on the high grade segregation, and even on the silver. So we run into this problem. I'll be honest. What happens is we only do business in jewelry and pawn. We don't take it in any dental. We don't go after dental. We don't go after industrial. We don't go after electronic. We don't go after industrial. It's not our forte. There's other companies that are great at no different like solutions. Like solutions, like if you got a solution, give it a solution. Advanced Chemical, great company. Good to do your solutions through them. They know how to take care of it. They know how to manifest it. They take care of it really well. Other people do a really good job on certain things too. Not us. We're not into that. So what happens, we only do business in jewelry and pawn. So we're only dealing with that jewelry scrap and that scrapping portion of it. So that's on the high grade. So like I tell you on the silver, what happens is when people get crazy. Silver, when I started in I started 1994. Silver was $4. $4. I think gold was $2.54. Silver was $4. Nobody cared. Now, when silver first ran with the Hunt brothers, they got the whole thing in the 80s, which I wasn't around for. But now, when silver back in 2009-10 went to 45, we're getting everything under the sun. The problem is the silver that comes in for a refining standpoint, unless it's a major manufacturer that's sending you silver trees or sterling silver that they produced, if the purity level goes down on the silver. So what happens is everyone expects sterling to be sterling. It's never sterling unless it's casted or bought grain and all that stuff. So when people buy stuff from overseas and all that type of stuff, it has a tendency to be lower carat. So sometimes, I'm sorry, it gets 91, 90, 88, 89. And then once you cross that threshold, it gets more expensive to refine, depending if you're using a chlorine process, a Mobius process. So then people will be like, I don't understand. Well, this is part of the problem. They don't know it, but when you throw everything in there, and the simplest thing, when you have, people like, I got all Tiffany flatware, forks and knives, don't throw the knives. And they'll throw the knives in. You know what I mean? Like, you understand, you've got the stainless steel.
Explain why not the knives.
Right, so you got the stainless steel blade, you got the investments, you got the lead that's based in there for the weight and all that stuff. Well, what happens from a refining standpoint, we are going off the assay. That lowers the assay down. So as the assay gets lower, the charge gets higher. And it's not something that like we're trying to say, I got you. This is I got you. It's like, don't do it. Clean it up the best you can. And that's a big part. So the silver people will dump in a bunch of, I call it junk. Yeah. And then what happens is for silver refining, there'll be like cadmium that comes from old time solders. All that stuff. Well, guess what? That's considered in the refining process a deleterious. Mm-hmm. So deleterious, guess what? It's more expensive. It takes down the cells. You have to clean it up and all that.
Safely.
So that and the customer gets mad, but this is the stuff from the old school stuff. This is what it is. And they're buying, and like I said, a lot of stuff is this is imported stuff. And it might not be like I tell people all the time, if you're buying stuff from, like, we'll go back to analytics real quick. One of the big things that United does is we have programs with a lot of the major retail chains and all that stuff. Well, if you're buying, a lot of times, if they're buying 5,000 pieces or whatever, they'll send us a couple of those pieces to test to make sure they're getting what they're supposed to get before they put their name on it and market it. That's one of the things of having, the analytics standpoint. And also, too, then they know, because people are, like I said, it's 90% of my problems with gold guys are silver. Because they're just comparing it like, well, gold's so easy. It's so, yeah, but silver's not. Because you have such a range on that variance and stuff. So, okay, so far so good. So back to segregation. Then you have the low grade. Now what I call high grade, high metal. I call bench sweeps, grindings, filings kind of in the middle of high grade and low grade. It's more of a high grade. And I give people the general rule of thumb. Basically, if someone has a bag of bench sweeps, little jeweler, and so they have a bag of bench sweeps, consider if it's a dirty bag of bench sweeps, you can kind of figure a rule of thumb, 25% of it's usually pure. If it's been cleaned up and the emery and the tools and all that stuff's been taken out, it's a lot more sifted, you ran the magnet through it, stuff like that, the value probably goes to 30 to 35%. And then what happens is if it's pure filings and all that stuff, obviously it goes up even more. So then you have the bench sweeps portion of it. In the bench sweeps, it's a lot harder to keep it segregated, right? Your platinum, your palladium, you're working on your bench and all that stuff. Some people I know in some of the retail operations have their own separate bench. Yeah. You have to work on platinum. Huge. If you can do that, it's great. If you can't, I mean, in this month's MJSA magazine, infomercial for MJSA, there's an article here called Clean Sweep. Myself, John Antonacci from Gannon Scott, Larry Fell from David H. Fell. Great tips and stuff like that from about what to do when it comes to maximizing your returns at the bench. Great article. What you're asking. So David Cochran, that's for you, and for Travis and for everyone, for Shauna, that's the plug for you. Okay, so on the low grade, what happens is like I tell, what happens is you usually have what I call different versions of low grade. You have your blower dust or your torque dust. And your those filters, I call that the high grade or the low grade. And then you'll have your floor sweeps, your paper towels, you're wiping down to the tools and all that type of stuff. You'll have that portion of it. And then you'll have your sludge. Mm-hmm. And you'll have your sludge. And hopefully on most major manufacturers, but even small retail chains, there's out there. Guest Wine sells a unit, Stellar sells a unit. Get those little sink traps. We sell a little unit also. Those filtration systems. You'd be surprised how many retail operations I walk in where they don't do that. Where they don't, and they're not trapping that stuff, and change that cartridge and have that sink clean once a year. But so really, to me, you have the blower sweeps and the torque filters. You have the floor sweeps, which is really the sweepings off the floor, the booties, the tools, the wipe down, all that stuff. And then you have like the carpet or the sludge. Those are really on when it comes to the low grade. When I talk to people about segregation, one of the things about the segregation to me is what happens is most major manufacturers can do it, but even the retailers can do it. With the benches, try to do it on a schedule. Mm-hmm. Try to do it like once every, for the major manufacturers, sometimes they're moving it a month or a quarter, every 6 months, or whatever. It's the same with the retailers. have your bench sweeps, do it once a month or once every 3 months, because it's easier for you to track. And then what happens is you can kind of have an idea and build your own system of spreadsheet it out. I sent 10 ounces of bench sweeps. I sent 25 pounds of sweeps. Well, what did it yield? And then what happens if you have a variance, you can be like, wait a minute, whoa, what's going on? Once again, go back to the expectations. You know, this is what it is. And the problem, what's happening is from a refining standpoint, and I'm actually quoted in that clean scrape, sometimes even some of the major manufacturers, they have a tendency to throw everything in the drum.
Yep.
Everything in the drum. And I mean everything.
And it's when somebody asks what's going on with our recovery. So there's a panic and everything goes in the drum.
Right. And then we're taking pictures of aerosol cans, tin cans, paint cans, stuff that's being thrown into those drums, and then they're adding to the weight. And then some of the stuff is just like, you know, unbelievable. And a lot of times the people that we're dealing with could be a major manufacturer. It could be the owner of the retail store that had someone else pack up their stuff. A lot of times they don't even know what's going in there. So then it's the freak out thing, you know. So for us now, as a refinery, and most of the other refineries and partners out there, they're taking pictures of everything. Not only are they taking video, they're taking pictures of everything, because what happens is the stuff that's dumped in a drum, plastic bottles, it's ridiculous. And you're right, refiners charge by weight. They're gonna have an incoming weight charge on that low grade. Okay, they're gonna have an incoming weight charge. They're gonna have an accountability charge, an assay charge. They're gonna be charged. The refineries are there to process that material. But what happens is also they want to make sure it's precious metals material. So when you take out all that stuff, you know, I just had a debate with a customer who sent us the old blower bags, the old canvas blower bags. So what happens is, and I've cleaned plenty of those machines out and all that stuff. Well, they couldn't understand why there was so much metal. I'm like, the metal's from the strip that it was actually hanging like basically an accordion. You know, that's really what it is. And then, you know, he's like, there should be no metal in my sweeps. Yes, there was. Okay, and then what happens is, well, I sent you 30 pounds of material. Yeah, but 20 pounds was metal. So, you know, that's really what it gets in their head. So you always have to be on the defensive.
Well, and for those of you who aren't doing your own packing up of, you know, sweeps and scrap, but you're having somebody else do it, one good process is to have the person who's putting your sweeps together, scraps, all of it, I need a better word, take a picture of it yourself. Don't wait until it gets to, there we go, high grade. Don't wait until the refiner's taking a picture and telling you what was in it. You should have a picture for yourself of the lots that you send in. And then that helps keep those expectations reasonable. And I want to mention something else you just said, Dave, because I think a lot of times people treat their recovery processes like a kid in their first job and their income taxes. You know, they're so excited when they get a big return that first tax year. And it's like, no, that means you didn't have that cash all year long. And the lot, and people will rationalize it and say, well, I don't want to pay the lot charges because they're small lots. But the reality is, this is your cash. And if you've got it flowing regularly, like Dave is suggesting, you can keep better track of it. You can have more reasonable expectations, and you also have the cash instead of just waiting until later. So I just wanted to interject that as a process issue.
Well, I tell people all the time, nobody cares more about your money than you do.
Right.
Okay? And people a lot of times will be like, it's a bonus. And I'm like, actually, and some of the major manufacturers, guys have been around for a long time, they know it's like, no, that's part of the process.
Part of it.
It's no different. What happens is, if all of a sudden the yield wasn't in the polishing dust, but also your yield increased in the floor sweeps, or it was in the sink sludge, you know? So what happens is, no, that was your money. And most of the guys are good about it. And sometimes, you know, it's just like, it's not found money. That's money that's actually in the pipeline. That's money that's been, we bought fine gold, we bought alloy and cast, we bought fab products for any of the guys. And that's part of the whole manufacturing process. The only where it gets a little bit, what I call like the lottery ticket, is carpet.
Yeah.
So carpet is
not going to rip it up every month, right?
So we have, and Larry makes a great point, and stuff like that. If you're going to vacuum the shop, use the same vacuum. Use it. If you're going to use the vacuum bag, listen. If you're going to vacuum your shop once a week, and it's be super clean and all that stuff, you have carpet and all that stuff. Well, guess what? So after you pull the carpet up in a couple of years, you send it out, and you're disappointed with your return. That's because it's been in your vacuum bag the whole time. You've been getting it the whole time. Now, say you have a shop that's not so clean. It's more like a college dorm. Okay. So let's say it's more like that. Then what happens is then all of a sudden we do the carpet, and there's like $12,000, $20,000, $50,000 of gold. So they're like,
or more with this carpeting. I was like,
exactly, and it's like, well, wait, it's just so. And I always take it back to refining because I'm always somewhat on the defensive, and the guys and my buddies will all say the same thing. All those times where you thought your sweeps barrel was light, or the floor sweep should have came back better, and all that stuff. Take that metal then that you got in your carpet or in your sink sludge, put it back into those. And then now total it up. Where you thought this was bad, now total the whole thing up. Not like, oh, this is holiday bonus for everyone and we're going on vacation. Just so you know, that was part of your process. And listen, I got to tell you a quick story on the carpeting. So there was a major manufacturer up in the Toronto area that probably 15 years ago when I started, they had carpet to pull out. So I went to pull out the carpet. They had 50, 55 gallon drums of carpet. Plus all that. It was like, it ended up being 18,000 pounds of carpet. Took us forever to burn it and all this stuff. Our one boss was flipping. Waste of time, waste of money and all that stuff. The research we're doing. To this day, there was 186 ounces of fine gold in that carpet. Yeah. The carpet obviously there for quite a while, so 186 ounces. And I tell people, and I tell that story in the summer, it's a 16-pound bowling ball, everyone. It's a 16-pound bowling ball. So I'm like, think about that, solid gold of that's what's in there. So it is part of the process. How are we doing on copper?
Gold, we're getting close, but gold is volatile, or it's been volatile the last few months. It looks like it's kind of like leveling out for a few minutes at least. What should we be thinking about during times when gold is volatile?
Well, what happens is you can do a couple things. Is a lot of the major manufacturers, they're taking back fine gold, or people are taking back gold. So the price of gold at that point doesn't matter on the refining. A lot of times they'll take back gold. That's a way that you can protect yourself from the market volatility. You have 24 karat. So if it goes down or go up, you have the fine gold from a manufacturing standpoint. Also, to as many places when it comes to, they have pool accounts. They have where basically you can take a combination of things. So on the volatility of the gold, the best way I tell people is because people are always watching websites, Kitco, all this type of stuff. They're watching websites. I'm always like, see if your partner has like a pool account. So then if he has a pool account, what happens? Get your refining in. Because you don't have to worry. If you get your refining in and you have a pool account and it's just sitting there, then it's just simple, one phone call away, and you can easily sell that gold or get physical gold. But when it's trapped in your manufacturing process and it's still there, by the time you package it up, you're going to be like, gold's falling $50. Now it's $75. Now they're not going to do stimulus. Now they're not going to do all that type of stuff. Boom, boom, boom.
So it's back to be prepared all the time.
It is. It is. And then I think one of the things is, and I'll bring out my little board here. So one of the things that's big, and I know we'll touch a little bit about, is this.
Yeah.
So social responsibility, right? What does it mean? Okay, I read a lot of your blogs and stuff like that. You're pretty interested in this topic and what it means. Okay. Everyone, what it means, you see each one of those certifications, they cost a lot of money. They cost a lot of money.
And they take a lot of effort. They take time and effort and dedication.
Right. And really what it is, and we have obviously the RJC, the SCS, United's, the COMEX approved, our conflict free, and the RMI. Each one stands for something different. So as a primary refinery who's tied in with all the majors, okay, all the majors, everyone wants social responsibility. And everyone wants basically that you're working with an ethical company and you're working with someone that's doing it right. That's really what it comes down to. And me saying, no, and when I'm at a trade show booth, we're doing it right. I'm at Vegas, I'm at JCK, I'm at MJSA, yeah, we're doing it right. Sometimes that's not good enough. What these certifications do is gives you that third-party audit, that someone's going to come in and say, they're going to check all the boxes, the RJC, they're going to check the RMI, they're going to check all that stuff, the SCS, that yes, their gold is certified. Yes, their processes are good. It is that stuff, and there's a fee for that. But what happens is when you go to a show, you can actually say, yes, our gold is SCS. It's 100%. It's 100% recycled gold. I mean, what's happened when you tie in the certifications, Andrea? When you turn in the certifications and you tie in the missteps and what we've had with basically the refining industry, Compliance has exploded.
Yeah, it has.
So when you talk about, dealing with your partnerships and stuff, it's the compliance part. We used to have one person, two people handling compliance. Now we have like 6 or 7. We're getting documentation and paperwork all the time on customers. And people are asking, I don't understand. I never had to fill this out. My last guy didn't fill it out. I'm like, well, your last guy filed bankruptcy and he stiffed everyone for $17 million.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is what happens is the paperwork, we all have to do this now. This is part of it. And I'll give you exactly how compliance works, a little example. If you sent me a bag of jewelry scrap and it was rings and casting trees, rings and pieces, I know exactly what it is, okay? Now, say you took that same jewelry scrap and you melted it into a bar, okay? Yeah. Which, like as a primary refiner, I'm always happy you do because you see the melt loss, you see the issues that already go with it. I'm not defending that right off the bat. Well, how come you lost an ounce? How come you lost an ounce? So now you've melted into a bar. Now I don't know where that came from. I have no idea where that came from. I don't know if it was jewelry scrap. Right. I don't know where it came from. So then what happens for companies like ourselves, we have what's called a metal source document. We actually have to stop the process. And then what happens, almost have you fill out an affidavit saying that this was jewelry scrap or pawn scrap that you melted for our documentation. So when the auditors come in and say, where did this bar come in from? Did this bar come from South America? Did this bar come from the Congo? Did this bar come from, how can you prove? And then what happens, we'll have to show, no, this company buys alloy, they buy stuff like that, they buy sizing stock, they might get stuff from, like I said, from Stellar, from Stern, from Orville, and say, this is what we have to do, and we have to show documentation that, no, this was jewelry stuff. So the audit process of this stuff only is getting more difficult. So now, like I said, we have a thing of 6 or 7. So I tell people when they come up to me at the booth at MJSA, they're like, we want green certified, everything wonderful, that there's no issues. I'm like, all right, just so you understand, we can do that. Our partner down the road here can do that. This company can do that here. But what I used to charge you $1 for, now I have to charge you $5. And guess what? I'm making the same amount of money because the $4 is now into the whole certification process of everything we have to do to make sure that you feel good of what manufacturing and the gold you're using, so then you can tell the story to your customers. So I always tell you there is a cost to all this.
Hey, Wendy's saying that, well, first she said, I'm thinking it's Waldenburg because it says Wendy's Seattle. So she'd be with Ethical Metalsmiths. And she's saying, if it's the wrong Wendy, tell me. Your SCS cert is why I rely on United PM. And then asking a question about, the responsible jewelry world of designers in this country for sure, is wondering how to get access to recycled chain. I know you guys don't make chain. Do you know of any major chain people that are buying recycled metal just to make recycled chain?
National Chain, like I said, National Chain buys recycled metal from, they go through a very stringent process and they manufacture their chain from start to finish. So
National Chain is doing this session. I forget the date, but I know there's some MJSA people on here, but I know I'm interviewing National Chain in a couple of weeks. So make sure you tune in for that one and we can ask them more questions about that. Hey, before we run out of time, can you talk to me about reclaiming gemstones and, stones make it through the process and which ones don't?
Yes. So really what happens on the stone removal. So really what stone removal is, real quick, guys, I'll tell you, you're taking a solid, so it's a solid as in all your jewelry scrap with stones. You're adding aqua regia, which is basically a combination of nitric and hydrochloric acid, and you're heating it and agitating it. So it's almost like being at a trade show booth. Okay, that's really what you're doing. So you're stirring all that type of stuff up. And then what happens is that acid is going to eat that metal. It's going to eat that metal and leave the stones. And then from that standpoint, what happens is we're going to then drain that solution. We're going to treat it with some nitric again. And after that, we add sulfur dioxide, we gas it, and it turns back into solid. But what happens is people are most curious about the stones that come through. The best thing to do is if you email me, and I think we can put my email address up and stuff like that, we actually have this handy dandy chart of what stones make it through the acid, which stones are subject. So basically what happens is the notes. So we go through what stones are heat resistant, acid resistant, and notes. So I'm happy to send this out as a PDF to anybody who would like to get it. I think I can put my email in the chat.
Yep, you can put it in the chat, and it's also, when you leave the session, you should bounce back to a page. Oh, Mary already added it for you, Dave.
Oh, really? Cool.
Oh, and Rich is telling us that the National Chain Expo webinar is October 28th at 2 p.m. So,
okay. So that's the big thing on the stone. And listen, lab-grown stones, they do make it through the process. Okay.
There's another question. Glenn's asking, when's the right time to have crucibles refined?
So really, crucibles are the low grade of the low grade of the low grade. So what happens is if you've already scraped them all out, Glenn, scraped them, everything out and all that stuff as much as you can, what happens is usually crucibles will go in. It could go in with your floor sweeps. I wouldn't put it with your polishing dust by any means. Or if you have enough crucibles, they could stand alone. We do, on major manufacturers, they'll do their own crucible lot. But if you have a couple small crucibles, really what we're going to do here is when they come in with your floor sweeps, after we burn everything, we're going to crush them. So we're going to crush those crucibles to get them down to a powder first. So if you feel like the crucible's shot, it's already poured, so you can't get any more, throw it in the drum. Put it in the drum.
When you're done using the crucible.
Correct.
So Carol has said, I heard there are 4 ways to refine gold. So I guess the first question is, do you look at refining gold 4 ways? And if so, what are they?
We refine gold here through the aqua regia process also. So basically, we're doing it just the way we've always done it. We've done it for 30 years. There's also, I believe, a chlorine process, so that's 2. I can't tell you the other 2, and I don't think anyone in our industry here, at least in North America, does it any other way. I think they're either using the aqua regia process or the chlorine process. There's a lot of people who try the backyard process, I'll call it. So if you want to call that the 3rd way, so they'll go on YouTube and they'll do that. Or a long time ago, I'm not sure if they still sell them, but they used to have those eyeshore little kits. They used to have these little eyeshore kits that some of the people used to sell, and they used to do their own little refining. But one thing about refining, guys, is when we refine here in some of the major refineries, they'll get their gold to 4 nines plus. So what that means is that's 99.99, and like ours usually runs 99.9995. Now there's plenty of places that only get the gold to like 2 nines, 99, only get it to like 99.5. The issue there is if you're then using someone who's supplying that type of fine gold and they're not getting it fully down to 4 nines, then it goes back in the manufacturing process. That causes problems. That causes porosity issues. That causes other issues on the casting, on the fabricating of metal. So I always tell people, really what it comes down to, garbage in, garbage out. So if you're going to use the best quality stuff, you're not going to have a problem. That's why these manufacturers like Stellar, Morvillo, Stern, Hoover, Rio, and all these guys, the guys that manufacture do stuff, they're only using the best products. They're only using top-of-the-line silver. They're only using top-of-the-line copper, all their zinc, all their base metals, and all that stuff, because everyone doesn't want any problems in the production end of it. And the only way to do that is use your best metals going forward.
Yeah. But Carol said, my students say they've done quarter gold. I'm not sure what that is.
You know what? Carol, I'll have to defer to Dr. Google on that one.
I don't know that one either. Gary says, Gary wants to know what you charge for stone return and what process you use.
All right, the better I like you, Gary, the better off you are. Really how it works on the stone removal, please reach out to us and all that stuff. We'll have a conversation. And usually stone removal, what happens is how it works and how you can ask your partners. Usually there's a refining charge, and then they'll have a stone treatment charge and all that type of stuff. And a stone treatment charge is really how to remove the stones. But also, Gary, to understand is also find out, okay, who's, basically how are they being shipped back? Who's responsible of the stones and all that type of stuff. If there's any issues, if their stones are broken, or if they're damaged, ask those questions to your partnership or your refinery so that you can have a conversation. To me, and it goes into partnerships. If you establish a great partnership, and I think we've lost this, sometimes. There are a lot of great companies, a lot of great people out there, and the people that have knowledge that have been around a long time, they've been in different segments, different areas of the jewelry industry. Build that partnership. It's not even about trust. It's not even about trust. It's like partnerships that, to me, what happens, you want to know if you have a good vendor and something like that, pick up the phone and see if he takes your call right away. See if what happens, he answers your email in a timely manner. Do you have his cell phone number to text them and all that stuff? Do you have that opportunity? That is, to me, about the partnership and stuff like that. And I think what happens is sometimes that's lost, and everyone goes to, everyone dismisses it like it's a commodity. Like, no, there's some people that do a much better job than others. But I think partnerships, no matter what, not just a refining partnership, but any type of partnership in our industry. Most of our friends, right, Andrea, you would say they've been longtime friends. They're long-term friends and all that stuff, and that's a big part of our industry. Listen, I tell people the jewelry industry is large, but it's very small at the same time. Mm-hmm. We're always at the same shows. We're always at the same conferences. We're always talking to each other and stuff like that. So I would tell people, it's just like, you never know who you're talking to. But if you ask questions, I think the biggest thing is what happens is people have lost the art of conversation, to have conversation. Everyone's so rush. I was so happy when you agreed and we said that we just wouldn't do a PowerPoint, that we would actually do a discussion. Because I've been in enough webinars where they're showing PowerPoints and you lose people after the first 10 minutes. Yep. It just doesn't work. So I'm very good with that. One of my big points about, guys, when it comes to refining, no matter who you're using, ship it and package it correctly. The amount of stuff that's shipped that looks like it came in a box that looks like it's been recycled 10,000 times. If you're sending precious metals, pack it properly. Lock the drum, lock the bucket, do whatever you have to do. Double box the FedEx, double box UPS. It's precious metals. But you believe it or not, there's still people that will actually put on the label, sending this to United Precious Metal Refining. I'm like, no. And it happens for everyone. You put refining in the name or you put it out there and stuff like that, it puts the red flags. Mm-hmm. Our industry, we got to, when we're shipping all that precious metals, the diamond industry does it well. They're not putting diamonds inside, but sometimes we're doing it. And also, too, is I would stress on this for everyone, your paperwork. Yeah. So we have plenty of customers, and everyone does, where they'll put their precious metals in, and they won't put any paperwork in. So,
and there's no paperwork on their end. So remember, paperwork and a picture on your end are still important.
100%. 100%. Do the paperwork, write the weights, because everyone's going to be like, I sent you 10 ounces. Well, we want to get, all of a sudden we get it to us and it's 8 ounces, and then we call. We want to make sure, or it's 12 ounces. We want to make sure. We want to eliminate that stuff. So these are just some tips and all that type of stuff.
Well, so and that points to a question that Ted's asking. He's saying on rare occasions, their test assay is different than the refiner assay. And how do you resolve that conflict?
So what happens is one of the things people can do for, especially a lot of major manufacturers, and they'll ask for a sample of their lot. So they'll ask for a pin sample or an ash sample. And also, too, is if you're going to send the pin sample or ash sample out to someone, okay, make sure it's to a credible lab, okay? Make sure it's not to some backyard YouTube lab. When I tell people is, we've got people that'll take an assay sample and they'll send it to some guy who's doing the fire assay for $8. I'm going to tell you something. If you're paying $8 for an assay, you're not going to get a quality assay, and the refinery is not going to legitimize that. So what happens is, this is what we were saying earlier, pull your pins, pull your samples. And the best way I always tell people is, send the pins back to your original refiner. If you pull enough pins, you pull enough samples, send it back to your original refiner. Change the number, change the code. Wait a couple weeks. Then send it to them, send it to their analytical portion. Say, I want this pin tested. And then what happens is, how can they argue with themselves? Wait a minute. You said it was X. Now you said it was Y. I'm not even using an outside person. So I'm always like, use the same company. Yeah. And I said, it's a good trick of the trade that you can do that and stuff like that. Because a refinery like ours, we're using fire assay. We're melting the complete metal. If you do a bar and you melt it, you take drillings, it is not the same thing. You can't compare drillings of a bar to a fire assay out of molten metal. You're going to have a range.
Yep.
It just is. And depending how that bar worked.
So Carol wants to know what's the smallest amount of gold that you would refine. And Jay wants to know if it's even worth it to refine sterling.
Most people, what happens is, most refiners, what happens is, I would say the minimum for most refiners charge on sterling is going to be anywhere from $100 to $125 minimum, Jay. So you got to figure on, let's say, you got to figure on a $25 silver market. The first 5 ounces go to cover the minimum. Same with us. We have a minimum gold lot charge. Okay, we have a minimum gold lot charge. That minimum gold lot charge is basically to cover sometimes the incoming freight, the melting, the crucibles, the 3 fire assays, the X-ray. So a lot of times you're going to have a minimum charge. Fee structure really off that is really really is what happens when you're talking to your partner or talking to whoever you're going to use. Know the fees. Get it written down. Have them send you a quote. What are the fees? What happens here? Tell me what's going on. Because a lot of times people will come up to me because people were fixated on, hey, I'm getting 98%, I'm getting 99, I'm getting 95, I'm getting like, and they're always like, is that a good? I'm like, you're asking the wrong questions. You know, so people walk around like it's a badge of courage, like, I'm getting this. Like, you have to ask your partner, your refinery, they're there to make money. The refinery's there to make money. We have 90 people here that have families and stuff like that that we want to treat really well and we want to take care of. Just like the companies that are sending stuff, they want to do the same thing. So on the fee structure, ask what fees are involved, what am I getting charged, what if there's PGMs in here? Ask those questions on that. And the smallest amount of gold to refine and stuff like that, from our standpoint, you can do an ounce. You can do an ounce of gold. So you figure an ounce of gold, right? An ounce of gold, if it's 10 or 14 karat, is actually have $1,000 value. If you have a minimum charge of $100, you're going to be ahead $900. So you can do small lots are fine. Lots are great. Any business is good business.
Well, we are at the top of the hour, and it doesn't look like we have more questions coming in. So any last thoughts for this group, Dave?
2. Okay. And my last thought is really a thank you to yourself. It's been wonderful and stuff like that. And it was a pleasure. I know we've met at certain events and all that type of stuff. And it's kind of funny because you've worked for a bunch of people we've competed against. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, what? I'm like looking at the research, I'm like, what? So it's like, it's been fantastic and all that stuff. So I appreciate it. And obviously my little Hallmark card, a special thanks to the board, the officers of MJSA, Rich, Travis, Shauna, Lucy, a special thank you to David Cochran. David's very good to this company and all that stuff. And for the people that are, hopefully everyone on is MJS people, MJSA people, or basically everyone's joined and they're part of the association. This is a wonderful association.
It is.
I mean, they put out trade magazines. They've got websites, the new stuff that they're doing with their website, these webinars, education. I mean, they're doing everything they can to help you stay in business and make more money. So what happens is when people are looking to sign up at the booth for MJSA, sign up, renew your application and all that stuff. Stay involved in the stuff. The perks that they give and some of the benefits they give, it's huge. It's a gigantic thing. And if we don't keep these associations going, we're going to lose in the end.
We will, because they glue us together.
They really are the common bond. And in 2020, we've missed trade shows. Mm-hmm. We've missed those conferences and being able to see, touch, feel. Right, jewelry, it's see, touch, feel. So what happens is we're missing that human interaction stuff, which is super important to this industry. So what they're doing with these webinars and stuff like that is fantastic. And how you're doing it with the interview process works out really well.
Oh, I'm glad. And I'm glad it was a good experience for you. So David did such a good job thanking MJSA that all I can say is ditto. It's my industry association of choice for all those reasons. So keep supporting MJSA and block your calendar for Wednesday afternoons at 2:00 Eastern time, because we're going to do more of these and really talk about making jewelry and all the things that go into making and selling jewelry a lot over the next few months. So I think that's it. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.